have something to show you. Something that will probably change your life. No promises, of course, but what I've got has a pretty good track record. Sharing this art around the world has helped many people change their lives for the better, present company included. Maybe it will also change yours. I'm going to show you the basics of pushing and pulling, of physical literacy, an introduction to the gentle art, what you need to know to get started on this journey, because it's a long one, endless really, and we all need an entry point. This is your guide to the perennial technology that we call Jiu-Jitsu. I'm going to show you how to move, where to move, the angles of attack, how to make friends with the ground, and engage with others in the great physical debate that perhaps you did not begin, but you'll know how to finish and come out on top, or at least survive safely, using timing, angles, and leverage, using intelligence over brute strength. Here's how it works. Eliminate movement options from your opponent by putting them on their back, going around their legs, and isolating their limbs. Or, if you can't get around their legs, isolate one of them. The brilliance of Jiu-Jitsu is found in letting go of something you wanted and recognizing the next opportunity. It's usually one turn away, so move what you can and use what you've got. As a beginner, your training begins with movements and escapes from the worst positions. Headlocks, the mount, the back, side control. Then I'll show you how to pass the guard and how to submit from both top and bottom positions. You'll have plenty of tools, but not too many. Just the right amount. There are multiple strategies and pathways, and far more techniques that I did not show. Let's be honest, you can't win it all in one night, but you can start here. And remember, Jiu-Jitsu isn't meant to be fashionable. It's meant to be actionable. It's a voluntary challenge we tackle so that we can take on other challenges in our lives with courage, faith, and conviction. The movements that make up these techniques are like the letters of an alphabet, which you'll form into words and eventually put those words into sentences. Then you can enter the physical debate and refine your arguments against many people over many years. So learn these words well, and you can command them from your body as easily as you can conjure a sound from the tip of your tongue. Now, it's time for you to take action, join in, and contribute to the conversation. This great physical debate that's been raging since time began. Let's get started. Come with me, and welcome to Blue Belt Requirements 2.0.
Forward rolls. Let's take a wide stance and then lower our base. Now, if there's a little bit of trepidation, with rolling and this drop from where we are, we can put our hand out, okay? I'm gonna take my extended arm and fold it through my legs. Tuck my chin, and I don't go over my head, I actually roll over my shoulder. Leg tucks, then I can flare my foot out and stand up. Now we'll do the other side. Lower my level, hand down. Have energy extending all the way through, from my pinky all the way through my arm, creating an arc. Fold through, leg is folded, comes back, allows me to elevate, and we continue. Lower your level, hand down, arm through, tuck your chin, leg back, turn, lower, hand out, arm through, backward rolls. Now, from a standing position, it's often easier to just drop to your knee. And then this is very important. You want to swivel that heel out of the way. Drop to your hip, heel in front of your hip. 2 arms over 1 shoulder. The knee that's up, that is the side that we go over. Okay? I fold my foot out of the way, drop to my hip. 2 arms over 1 shoulder. From there I can press up. From a standing position, you just drop. With a T. T shape with the leg, drop down, press up. Turning, drop with a T. 2 hands over 1 shoulder, press up for your backward roll. Forward break falls. The point with forward rolls is to continue the momentum. The point of break falls is to break the momentum, halt the momentum, or slow it down. So, same as before, lower level, I can put my hand out. The hand that goes down is actually the one that will slap. So, hand goes down, arm feeds through, tuck my chin, and then we slap. Now, my arm is in alignment with my femur. My lower leg is completely even with the ground. My other leg has the sole of my foot make contact with the ground, not crossing over. This can lead to some lower back issues and some strain. Boom. Right hand is in tight. We'll do it again. You can start from a low level like this if you'd like. Hand out, arm through. Slap the mat. 1 sound, 1 slap is ideal. If you land piecemeal, you're not absorbing the impact properly. You want to unify the absorption of that impact. Lower, or you can be up here. This is fine too. You don't need that hand, but you do need to slap. Rear break falls. Going back through the center line is the first one you should learn. So you start standing, but then you lower your level. Okay? Tuck your chin, both hands go out, absorb the momentum, and then you can come up into position. Tuck your chin, come back up. Or do it from standing. Lower your level. Use the momentum to come back up. Lower, tuck your chin. You can also add a technical stand-up. A slightly more advanced skill is to break fall to the right or left. So you can go straight back, or if you get pushed, you can bring your leg behind you and then roll out to the side. So if you're pushed suddenly backwards, drop, rotate, and be sure to slap. Finally, we can do some lateral kemi. This is very similar to a foot sweep in judo. We're just going to continue that motion. I step out with my left leg, sweep my right leg out, and then lower my level on that leg that's in contact with the mat. Use that momentum to come back up, and then sweep my leg out, unified motion with my arm and my leg. Lower, come back up, sweep, and sweep. Fundamental movements. Jiu-Jitsu relies on fundamental movements that are repeated in multiple positions for multiple techniques. Essentially, you want to choose between being a ball and a cube. The ball allows momentum to continue. The cube stops momentum. Sometimes you want to be the ball, sometimes you want to be the cube. But first, you need to learn how to be the ball. One way of doing this is grabbing your gi and learning how to turn your body into a spear, using your legs for momentum. This is fundamental movement or rocking exercise that everyone should warm up with and practice. Okay. The next fundamental movement is shrimping or the snake move. I'm going to eliminate all the friction of my body in relationship to the mat. I raise my hips up so only the heel of my foot and my shoulder are in contact with the mat. Come back, lift up, push out. Lift up, push out. You can use 2 feet, or you can use 1 foot. Either is fine. More advanced variations of that shrimping motion include moving up, out, feeding the leg underneath, and pushing back. Bridge up. You can also then continue to push for a more advanced snake move, feeding the leg under and pushing up. And these are exercises designed to get you to be friendly with the ground. Don't fear the ground. The ground is your friend. You just have to know how to move in relationship to it. And eventually you can draw power from the ground. So move intuitively. Rocking. Bridging. Snaking. Doing a technical stand-up. Flowing into a roll and a back roll. Folding your legs underneath and continuing to move spontaneously. Making friends with the ground, paying particular attention to not go over your neck at any time. You always want to roll over your shoulder and avoid that contact with your head. Be spontaneous. Move on the ground and make the ground your friend. Double leg takedown. This is a simple movement, and I think a great self-defense oriented way of entering into it is having Jordan push my shoulders. I step back, but I hold on to his sleeves. From here, I lift his arms as I drop my knee in between his legs. Now, it's possible I can get the takedown, but let's add a little insurance. I'm going to step around with my outside leg just to make sure I get that trip. From here, I put all of my weight into my shoulder, hop around, and then secure side control. Now, if our partner sprawls as we enter the double leg, we need to change the angle. We need to turn. Pushes, I drop into it, he sprawls. Look up with your head, step, 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 turn. Drive your shoulder into it. Bring your hands into side control. Single leg takedown. This is my favorite variation with a gi. I grip Jordan, he grips me. Okay? I'm going to shuffle back so that he steps. I then drop my knee and break his posture. My head needs to be going into his ribs. I hook his leg and drive him back. I want him to hop. If I can get the hop, everything's good. At this point, I can run the pipe. I'm going to take him where he doesn't have any base. My head can be inside or outside. If it's outside, I drop my shoulder on top of this thigh. From here, I lean back and use his weight to propel me into knee on belly position. Same position. This time, he escapes my legs and flares it to the inside. At this point, I want to let go and go back on his ankle. Leave it a little bit loose. Don't try to control it here. I want the furthest leverage point possible. At this point, take your inside middle finger, trace the inside of his knee. I'm going to take a small step in, rotate this, and then prop his heel. Taking him down, push the legs aside, and finishing the belly position. We head into the single leg. Boom. He flashes that heel to the outside. This is very easy. I rotate my toes out, heel forward. Now, I can step straight through and kick his leg out, or, if I'm a little bit more kind, I'm going to step in, but then rotate my body. And then we're in perfect position to pass or take a footlock. Inside trip, one of my favorite techniques. I don't step back, instead I circle and make him step. Now, check out the footwork. Cross step, back step. Then I drape this over his shoulder, weighting him in that direction, and then I drop to my knee. Now, we haven't taken him over yet. I windshield wipe my heel, catching his ankle, and my hip buckles his knee, and we get the takedown. Ogoshi, the major hip throw. So this is a fundamental judo technique, and it's a little bit of a long distance to be able to get the underhook and rotate your hips all the way in. Okay? So I recommend starting slightly from the side. If you can come here and notch your head into his neck, that's so much better. I'm going to angle my heel. I'm going to step across. And if my hips are even with him, he might be able to slip out. So I'm going to poke my hip through a little extra, bending my legs, allowing him to rotate over, and continue to hold on to that elbow. Harai Goshi, or sweeping hip throw. So I'm going to sweep his outside leg out from under him with my own leg. Again, cross step, back step. This is the entry for so many judo throws. Cross step, back step. Cross step, back step, enter, and then sweep. A couple of common issues with judo throws in general and this throw. Number one, I'm too far away. I'm here, and then I'm reaching, but I'm not underneath him, and we're not connected. So, I need to be able to open the door, get a deep back step, and lower as we head into that throw. Trap and roll mount escape. So, I need Jordan to get his hands on the ground, so I'm going to disrupt his balance, bump him with my knee, then palm over palm, break down the arm, bring it to my chest, unfurl my hands, capture behind the tricep, and then lock that wrist against my body. Okay? I want to be able to capture that ankle. If I need to, I can use my elbow. Push that down. Block his ankle, then bridge up, come over, and then be sure to block his biceps with your palms to finish the position. Overhook mount escape. This is a little more self-defense oriented. Okay. So if Jordan's throwing punches at me, I need to bridge and hug. From here, I'm going to walk up, okay, and then I'm going to reach around, get the overhook. I don't need to overhook on both sides, just one. Trap his ankle, Then I'm going to bridge up and punch him with my bicep as we take a much safer position inside of his guard. So, one thing to keep in mind, as I wrap this, it's very easy for your partner, if their palm is down, for them to injure their fingers. Okay, so have your partner turn the back of their hand to the mat, block, bridge, and finish in good posture. Foot drag mount escape, really useful to memorize this motion. At the moment, I want to trap his foot with my far leg, but my range of motion is not great right now. So I'm going to frame his hips and then reinforce with my elbow, okay? The elbow can go on the inside or on the top. I'm going to bridge just enough to get that leg flat on the ground, use my elbow to push it down. Pull his ankle and then guide with my elbow until I can wrap over. Now I can pinch his leg, frame against his neck. This other elbow enters to the inside of his knee. I use it to push out and insert my knee. From here, I push my knee into him, shift my hips, pull my heel around, and then we're back in close guard. Foot lift is very similar. Same opening motions, but instead of going over the top, I'm going to hook underneath his instep. Lift, I can then replace with my leg. Shoot this arm across. This is important to prevent him from coming into me at all. I can even raise my wrist to open that chin, move my hip out, use my elbow to pry open his knee. For shorter people, it might be the hand. That's totally fine. Use what you got. I use my elbow, then I push in with my knee, shift my hip, and we're back in close guard. Sometimes you just crack the door open. You don't have to open the door entirely. You just crack it open, and then you can massage a little bit more space. So here's a great example. Break down the arm. I'm threatened to roll him, but I didn't trap his ankle. He bases with his leg. I insert my shin. At this point, I can move my hip out and continue my mount escape. headlock escape number 1. I would like to frame his jaw with my forearm. Second hand comes in, doesn't press on my hand, presses on my forearm. I'm starting to rock him back, but I am actually in the way. So I move my hip out of the way so we can get that tilt. There's an overlapping pressure from my arm to the leg. I hook my knee right around his neck, cross my ankles, extend and break the hold. Now, my knee notches below his jaw, on the throat, squeeze my legs together, we get the leg scissor choke. Next, move up to my elbow. Take the leg underneath his neck and bring it around into arm lock position. From here, wrap his wrist and finish with your arm lock. Headlock escape to Kimura. So right now, I would love to be able to get my elbow below his hip, but it's a little bit difficult. So I lift him on the opposite corner. I'm actually gonna pull his shoulder back, and now I can get my elbow in. From here, I can reach his wrist. I get closer and hook his leg. Now I bridge off of my toes, extend my arm, bumping him, and then finish with Kimura, driving my shoulder into his shoulder for the finish. Now, headlock escape into a self-defense arm lock. From here, I'm gonna pull on his shoulder and move my hips out of the way. So simultaneous motion, I'm moving out 1, 2, tip him. Okay, he's still got a hold on my head. Now, clear his legs and step over. He still has a hold of my head. So put the forearm in front. Now here's the tricky part. Don't just go straight up. Lean into him. Get this angle in his arm. From there I can brace, either pushing off of his head or the ground, transfer the weight to my hand, and then take my straight arm lock. Side mount escapes. The classic side mount escape involves having your arms in good posture. That means one forearm underneath the neck. Now, I'm kind of in the middle of my forearm right now. This is okay. A weaker position would be having the wrist under the neck. He can crush that. I don't have good leverage. Even better than in the middle is having it more toward the elbow. You wanted that bottom third of the forearm. Okay, now that's good. If he wants to impale himself on my elbow, he's more than welcome to. So you might want to go a little bit deeper, not necessarily gripping the gi here, but cupping. Okay, so it works gi and no gi. This other arm, elbow is down, and I'm indexing the side of my wrist against his hip. Okay, now we're going to do a slow motion bridge. Heels come to your hips, slow motion bridge up and out. Fall away. Insert your shin all the way to the instep. I pull his arm out of position and take it with me as I square up. Wrap this other leg. Drop the foot and then do one more hip movement, pulling your heel around and finishing in closed guard. Going to the knees is an important option from side control. We start in the same manner. Okay? So I'm going to bridge up and out. Now, continuing to extend energy through my arm, I circle it under his armpit. I scissor my legs at a 45-degree angle and come to my elbow. I transfer the weight to my elbow, come up to my knees. Now I can do a knee tap, blocking his knee, driving forward with my shoulder, and passing the guard. One common issue when it comes to this technique is people don't allow enough space. So as I come up and out, they often scissor the rear leg forward, coming into your partner. Be better to bring the inside leg back as you bring that arm underneath. Then you can come up and take top position. If your arm is out of position around the head instead of being underneath the neck, you'll still have a great option right here. So keep it tight. I'm going to move my arm outside and block his knee. If possible, try to move his knees slightly together. And this is not always possible, but you're not going to get it if you don't try. Once I get my hips as close to him as possible, blocking this outside leg, I want to rotate my arm and bump him with my bicep as I bridge up, over, and reversing the position. Now, this doesn't always work, but the one can set up the second technique. This applies across all of jiu-jitsu. I bring my elbow to the outside, I try binding his knees together, and he instead spreads them apart even more. That's okay. I drop my elbow on the inside, move my hip out, and now there's much more room to be able to go back to guard and improve my position. Sometimes the best way to escape a bad position is to not let it materialize, to preemptively prevent it. And we'll do that right here with side control. So as Jordan pushes on the leg and is passing, I'm going to block his far arm. Okay? I have my elbow near my hip. As he slides through over my leg, I position my elbow under the knee. Now, pushing him back, I walk my feet in a circle toward his feet and take him over, reversing the position. Even if your timing is a little bit off, you can still cheat that position. So as Jordan passes, he passes, but my elbow's out of position here, okay? So what I do is I use my bottom knee to bump him and feed to that elbow. Now, continue to walk your circle, extend with your arm, and you're in great position to continue the dominance. So, occasionally, you can get them to move by presenting a little bit of bait. If my arms are in good posture, I'm going to move my hip, and the bait is for him to retain more control by dropping his hip next to mine. I move my hip out, he drops his hip, and I extend on that arm. I drop my elbow close to my hip. At this point, they often try to overpower that by driving off of the ground. That gives a little bit of daylight under his leg, and then I can walk into the position and take top. Arm lock from the guard. The basic move uses your first grip as a cuff grip. Second grip is going to be underneath his arm and then search behind his elbow. Okay. I'm going to put my foot on his hip, rotate 90 degrees or as close as I can get to it. Okay. I push off of his hip while the other leg goes behind his armpit. Heel actually aiming toward his far shoulder. So nice lock down here. Then I can bring my other leg over. I'm not going to cross my ankles. I want independent leg action. And old school was just raising the hip up. New school is rotating the heel out as the knee comes in, and then it takes a very small hip movement to get the arm lock. Now, if Jordan drives his elbow into my hip, we can still deal with it, but we have to make a modification here. So I need to raise the entire platform of my hip. Raise it up with my ankles crossed. As I drop my hip, I create a frictionless environment where I can pull his arm over. Then my second hand goes to his shoulder. I can control his posture, and I can also lift under his chin with my forearm. foot goes on the hip, rotate 90 degrees, push them out, leg goes over, don't cross, independent leg action, heel down, and then take my arm lock. One of the litmus tests I use to see if someone's ready for their blue belt is to gauge whether or not they know which direction to turn when an armbar presents itself. So if Jordan puts his forearm on my throat, which is a very common attack by wrestlers and larger individuals, he starts to choke me like this, I need to immediately, number one, wedge my forearm underneath his throat and then grab his shoulder. That is space we will pass off to our leg. I put my foot on his hip so I can swivel. Right arm goes underneath his hamstring. I wedge my leg behind his shoulder. Other leg goes over his face. Again, turn that heel out just a little bit and then raise my hip. If I need to, I can sweep him over. Knees together, go back, gravity on my side, and take the arm lock. Let's talk about mechanics for a moment. Mechanics are what make your submissions tight and inescapable. The secret to reversing techniques is blocking the mechanics. Okay, so you want to understand the mechanics for the arm lock well. One mechanic is bringing your heels to your hips. So I pull my heel toward my hip around his head, other heel goes into his armpit. I'm creating pressure here. Next mechanic is squeezing the knees together. Squeezing the knees together should not be underestimated. This is extremely important both for arm locks, leg locks, and submissions in general. Okay. Now, I can hold on and steer his thumb so it's in upward position, or I can grab it and get a bite with my elbow. I find this to be superior than I have a free hand. I can also reinforce that elbow so he can't escape. So heels to my hips, knees together, lean back. And then, of course, I have all this extra range of motion if I need. So again, heels to your hips, knees together. Grab his wrist, if possible, with your elbow. Then you can either gable grip your hands together or even hold on to his leg to secure the position and finish with the arm lock. Occasionally, your partner will stack you in the arm lock so you can't extend your hips and they're blocking your arm lock. So when that happens, very frequently against larger individuals, you need to be able to spin underneath your opponent and complete the circle of the arm lock. Here's an example. Forearm on the throat, I spin, legs are in position, he stacks me on my head. When the weight is on my head, I cannot extend here, nor can I sweep him at the moment. I take the inside arm, bring it to the outside of his thigh. I begin to spin underneath him and squeeze my knees. Here is an arm lock that I can take. I can also reach down, grab his pants or the inside of his leg, pull him over, and finish with an arm lock. Very often, they will do that for you by rolling out. So, if your partner stacks you but not directly on your head, but still prohibits you from extending your hips and taking the arm lock, you need to redirect them to the empty corner. Here's what I mean. Forearm on the throat, rotate into position. It's difficult for me to extend my hips. This is hard on my back as well. I don't want to push directly back into him because I'm going into his knee, into his base. I want to pull sideways, laterally, with my knees, tip him. Then it's easy to push him back, grab that wrist, hold the leg, heels to my hips, knees together, and you finish the arm lock. The Kimura, an essential submission. Once you learn how to identify it, you can see it in all kinds of locations in Jiu-Jitsu. From here, we'll do it from the guard. I want to break his posture and get his hands on the mat. So I'm going to undercut his grips, pull him forward with my legs. Now, I'd like to grip with no thumb his wrist. Palm is pressuring into his wrist, fingers pulling back. Uncross your ankles. Move your hip out to the side, which makes it much more accessible to go up, over, and grab my own wrist. From here, I collapse my elbow, shoulder on the ground, and I can use my inner thighs as well as my heel on the ground to get the rotation going. I need to snake to the side 1 time, 2 times. 1 time is not enough. From here, I can either have my knee pressing down, foot on the hip, or I can cross, or I can simply hook my heel on the far side of his hip to accentuate the rotation into the submission. Now, one warning. If I'm flat on my back, you have to use your arms. That's not the point. You want to integrate your body. I want you on your side, looking at him. Pull that elbow into you, and then rotate your torso for a much tighter submission. Telephone arm lock. So, often achieved after you get a bent arm lock, in this case the Kimura. I'm sitting up, I drop my elbow, I'm going for the bent arm lock. He resists, he doesn't like that. He straightens his arm. I guide his thumb into the crook of my neck and shoulder pinching. Reinforce over his elbow. Now, I need to get my legs in position to stabilize this. I move my hip out slightly, bottom knee pressing against his chest, foot on hip and knee on top of shoulder. From here, I want his elbow to bow toward the ground. So, put my elbow on top, reinforce my elbow, and do a side crunch for the submission. We can finish with a more traditional crossbody arm lock after the telephone arm lock. So we head into our Kimura. He straightens, telephone arm lock. He pulls it in. I catch it with my bottom arm, move my shoulders back. Use my arm to generate momentum, to push my body all the way through. It's very important that my knees are together right here, okay? If I can't achieve this or want to rotate them, I can do an arm switch. My foot is on the back of his head. I pull his knee toward me, and then we finish with a regular arm lock. Another common scenario is your partner standing up, and as Jordan pushes to stand up, sometimes you can lose the arm lock. If you try going off of the hip, there's too much space here. You know, my legs are open, he postures up, he can pass my guard rather easily, okay? So the key is to keep it tight. That's what we want to do. We want to keep things tight. So as he postures up, I want to walk my shoulders in a little bit and hook under his heel, okay? From here, I can then hold onto his sleeve, throw the leg over the face, and then behind the armpit. And now it's very easy to get a sweep and finish with an arm lock. So, palm up choke. Classic choke, symmetrical choke. Not as high percentage, but critical to know. Make life easier for yourself. Lift that collar. If you just reach for it, you'll end up shallow. But if you open the door, it's easier to enter. So shoot this up so the curve of your wrist matches the curve of his neck. Have to go deep. Search for the tag. Now, from here, I'm gonna open up his chin just a little bit and shoot my arm underneath. Okay, I don't need to go really deep immediately, but if you enter and then start to move your hand up, that's even better. Now, my elbows should stack in this position, okay? If my elbows are out, it's gonna be very difficult to get the choke. They're already flared. I want to stack my elbows on top of each other. So much better. I come back to center line, I pull him in, I open my elbows, and then finally I roll my wrists in for the submission. When it comes to chokes, it's extremely important to align your elbows. So as I reach for his collar, I'm going to trace around his neck. Okay? And then this is very common. People will try for the second collar, but look how flared my elbows are immediately. So as I rotate my elbows out, the space in between my thumbs does not constrict. What you would rather do is reach, and if you need to shift your elbow over, that's better. Okay? Straighten, and now the space in between my hands disappears as I flare my elbows out. So if you reach with wide elbows, you're not going to get the choke. If you try to align your arms vertically, it's easier to open the elbows, constrict the space, and then as the final finishing move, rotate your wrists in or corkscrew them to eliminate the final bits of space. Okay. Palm up, palm down choke. Much more high percentage. Again, we open the collar and we get our hand very, very deep. Okay. Note how I shift my body. I'm not just reaching from a flat plane here. I'm actually rotating my body so I can get a very deep grip. Now, getting to this other side from my current position is going to be difficult. So I need to shift to the other side, and at the same time I'm going to pull him just a little bit with my arm. So I'm going to bump him with my knee, rotate my body. Okay? There's a fold right here created by the pinch on the other side. I want to grip this fold. I can deconstruct the position of where I'm placing my hand by placing my forearm against his neck and then flinging my wrist up to grip his gi. Okay? Memorize that spot. That is where you want to grip. Then as you come back into center line, you're actually blocking one side of his jaw while the original hand that entered cuts into his neck. So it's not going across both sides of his neck. One side is being blocked while the other hand does the choke. So, sometimes it's a little difficult to reach that side or it's too obvious. So you can also come up and grip. Then when the time is right, you switch to the other side. Your hand is in the memorized position. Block his jaw, and then come into position. It's always preferable to get a choke up top, then pull him back into your guard to complete it. The loop choke, extremely useful, especially against wrestlers and people that like to drive forward with their head. If they have a good base, this is a real vulnerability on their part. Okay? So, contrary to the earlier chokes where we got an extremely deep grip, I actually want to go with a medium grip right now. Okay? I am going to create a little space, move my hips out so I can sit up. I'm going to take his head and put it into a basket. So I take his head, push it to the side as I begin to loop this around. I push his head to the side of my chest, okay, and flare my fingers up. This is very important. This is a locked position, this is not. Flare those fingers up. From this position, with my wrist concave, I simply lean to the side and connect my knees and heels together. For this particular choke, timing is more important than anything else. So, medium grip, I move my hip out, I come up, push his head to the side, not into my chest. I move it to the side and then continue with my hand. Okay? I can lean forward. Sometimes you can get it from right here. Sometimes you have to lean all the way down. Don't be afraid to continue to corkscrew your body. Okay? Against someone with good posture, often you take this medium grip and you push out the knee, which drops his head right into the choke. The triangle choke, one of my favorite techniques. So our goal is to have him retract or extend one arm. So one arm and his head are trapped in between my legs. Easy way to do this is to pull. He pulls back. I stuff that against his chest. Foot on hip, elevate my hips. Come down, and if I can get a rotation at the same time, even better. Okay. Now I lock my leg. My instep is right underneath my knee in position. From here, I point my toe up, flex my calf, rotate my leg out, and finish with the triangle. There are many ways to get into the triangle choke. Pulling and having him pull back is one way. I can also begin to move out. I move my hip out, use my knee to push his arm out of the way and get him tilted toward me slightly. From here, I use the back of my calf to help pivot my body into position. Okay? Now, lock up my legs. So, we have the triangle, but it's not quite tight enough. What I'd like to do now is make an adjustment. Grab my own shin close to his head. I can step off, go to his hip rather than the ground, adjust so I'm closer to a perpendicular angle, relock it, and if I need additional squeezing power, I can lock my hands or simply hold onto my calf as I squeeze. Guillotine choke. A little bit more difficult to get inside the gi, but still a viable option and one you should know as basic. Open my ankles. Often you use it in conjunction with the kimura. I place my hand out to the side, and then as I shift my hips toward my hand, I wrap his neck. I should be able to position myself in balance. Hips down, legs out, no hands. From here, I continue to wrap his neck, and I have enough space to connect to my own wrist. Okay, I don't want to grab my hand. Sometimes you do, but generally go for your own wrist. Now, continue to spiral and drop that elbow. Wrap around his neck, puff your chest. Sometimes you can get the technique here. Other times, once it's in position, you pull him back into your guard. Then you push with your legs as you lift with your arms. Scissor sweep from the guard. We'll start with a cuff grip, 4 fingers in his cuff. Right hand up in his collar, can be on the other side as well, but let's go same side collar as the cuff grip. Gonna uncross my ankles, move my hips out, drop my leg all the way to the ground. My other leg can either go across this belt line or 45 degrees across the sternum. Okay? Now, here's the trick. You want to pull them forward, but not have your leg collapse. Okay? You want to have an extension going from your hip through your femur all the way connecting to his chest. So now when I pull him, lifting with the elbow, makes him much more solid in the lift. Okay? From here, it's very easy to scissor my legs. I'm going to punch down to the ground and then lift up on this sleeve, setting up for the next submission. Sometimes we need to follow up to the scissor sweep, even though we're doing everything correctly. I uncross my ankles, I move my hip out, I slide my shin across his belly. I have a very firm instep with my right foot. I'm not lifting with my wrist here, I'm actually pulling back with my shoulder and elbow, but then he widens his base. Okay, now I don't have the sweep that I had. From here, bring your knee up, push out on the knee, take him over, and then finish in top position. As I head into here, sometimes I can be blocking my own range of motion, right? So it's important to pull that shoulder back. Now I have plenty of room to bring that knee up, push it out, continue your scissor, and you can head into that or any kind of submission that you'd like. The hip bump is a fundamental sweep. I need to get his hands on the ground, then I move my hip out. I can come up as if I'm going for Kimura, or I don't have to link it with another technique at all. I can swim up over the shoulder, then get my hand behind me. For a similarly sized opponent, you can be on your elbow, but I always recommend coming up to your hand so you can get more elevation with your hip to push into it. From here, I'm going to swipe out that elbow. He can't regain his base, and then take him into the mount position. One cool variation on the hip bump sweep is going into it like you normally would. I'm going to get a cross grip on his cuff. I move my hip out so I can sit up effectively. Come to the hand, hip bump, but I allow him to catch his base. At this point, I'm already leaning into him and having him tip. So all I have to do is pull that out. He thought he caught his base, but I get the sweep. Spinning arm lock from the mount. This is a basic technique that allows us to explore the idea of weight transfer. And it's a great self-defense technique as well. Okay, so I'm going to put my chest down and prompt the reaction of Jordan pushing me off, like that. Okay, now that I have that resistance, now I choose to go into position. I can either have my hand one palm on his chest, the other one right over, or I can do thumb down, thumb up, thumb down on the side that I'm taking. This is preferential for me. Okay? Transfer the weight into my hands. Slide my knee up all the way to his head. My belt is in line with his shoulders. From here, I keep my heel on the ground as I trace in a circle. Pull my heel toward his ear. Now, I hook his wrist, transfer the weight to my right hand, small circle with the heel, fall back, and then I can take my arm. This can also be practiced with a little more momentum. So as I press my chest down, from here I don't slide the knee up. In fact, I just pivot on that knee. I pivot on the knee, transfer the weight to my hands, and that allows me to throw the leg over with a little more momentum into my arm lock. Americana for mount. Here, I'm going to take my palm and put it right on his wrist. Okay? Second palm goes out to the elbow. I'd like to use my body weight, so I'm going to spread my knees and open, pressing down. I would like to get his wrist back into his shoulder where it's weak. Drop my elbow. Okay? Continuous pressure right here. Slide underneath, grab my own wrist, and at the same time, my rear heel is going to hook that leg. Now I drag his elbow down as far as possible and lift for the Americana. Very often they'll straighten that, so in order to finish I need to back step and then clear to side control. Whew, he doesn't like that, so he rolls it down. At this point, press up, pull his arm back into you, cupping at the tricep, and get your forearm on his sternum. Now it's spinning arm lock. Hand goes out in line with his belt. Extend from your rear leg while you swivel and pivot into position. Heels pull in tightly to your hips. Slide up, knees together, and finish your arm lock. Sometimes you need to weave your arm through so you can have a little bit more control. So you can start by lifting on that wrist and pushing this other arm down just a little bit. I want to get my hand in here, and eventually I want to work my elbow to the ground. From here I can wrap. I'm going to slide my knee up. Again, flip my leg. That arm is now behind me. Throw the leg over the face. Then I have this arm lock. There's a lot of control necessary for this. So if you lose control, just have your other arm ready to catch and finish with your hands. It's also very common for your opponent to switch their arms So it's more difficult for you to lock the arm that you intended. I'm sliding, I would prefer this arm, but as soon as I go into position, he changes it. No problem. If you can get a grip here, fantastic. Then switch to the other side, sliding my hips off of his torso, lodging it very close underneath his shoulder, and then we can lean back and take the arm. Chokes from the mount. Palm up is going to be the basic symmetrical choke you should learn first. Open the collar. Insert your hand as deep as you can. Second hand goes underneath, okay? And again, I want to cross my elbows on top of each other. This is where we want to be. I hook with my heels under his hips, drop my head toward the hand that's on top, and take your submission. Palm up, palm down choke. This is a much more high percentage choke from both the guard and from the mount. Okay, so insert that first hand, and if we need to pull up a little bit and keep feeding it, that's great. Okay. Second hand comes over. Now, you want to grip the gi right at the shoulder as close to the neck as possible. Okay, if you further out the shoulder you go, the less aligned your elbows are and the less leverage you have. So you'd like to be able to get that very, very close. Okay. I'm going to, again, straighten my elbows, come down, whisper in his ear, again, head going to the top side hand. There are a number of variations that you can do with the palm up, palm down choke. So we're here, I can do a shave choke variation where I drop my elbow, bring it across his jaw, then go get my grip, again, hooking with my heels, and get my hips a little bit closer to my hands, creating more pressure for the choke. Alternately, I can insert my hand, and I can also move his head with my elbow. Really good leverage at that point. From here, I can insert my thumb, straighten my arms, and then come down into the choke. Fist choke works gi and no gi. I'd like to be able to get underneath his head for a strong mount control. Next, I'm going to grab my own gi, this is preferable, and I'm going to create a fist. Now, there's different ways you can do this. You can do it with more flat knuckles, which is what I prefer. You can grab the gi, flat knuckles against his throat. I press, and then I save the rolling of the shoulder for the second part. Alternately, I can use my knuckles here. Get it right in his neck. It's exceptionally painful. The Ezekiel is another option. Again, I'm underneath his neck. Okay. I'm gonna grab my own gi. I can start as a fist choke and then slide it over. Now, my wrists are bent currently. I can grab my own gi if I'd like, but you don't have to. Okay, on this other side. From here, I'm gonna rotate my wrists and straighten my arms. Side control. Transition to knee on belly. Insert my thumb behind the collar. My other hand frames in his hip. I pop up. My foot can be in contact with the mat, but the majority of my weight is actually in my shin going across his belt line. I can also vary the angle of my knee depending on how mean I want to get, but typically this is a more compassionate angle to have. Okay? My outside leg can float anywhere from his head back to his hip. Totally fine. Now, typically, he will initially want to push there and hip out. I want to scoop underneath his shoulder, okay? My forearm is on his sternum. At this point, my hand goes out. I'm going to swivel in this space. Even if my shin goes low in line, that's totally fine because I can always adjust and bring my shins up together, squeezing his arm and setting up for the arm lock. The baseball bat choke is another technique you should know from knee on belly. I go into my position. If he pushes up from side control, I want to float to knee on belly. I want to blend with his resistance. Okay, so I have one thumb already inserted. Other hand, you can start kind of shallow and then work your way in. Drop your elbow on his sternum. Okay, from here I pivot. My knee that's across his belt line kills that top arm. Transfer the weight to the knee, and then I pivot. Now, this arm, the one on off his sternum, comes down. I drop my head in the nook right next to his hip, and I straighten that thumb in arm. Now, if I bring my head to the other side, it's even tighter. Depends on where you want to end up. Continue to straighten that arm until you get to tap. Rear naked choke, a basic you should know from the back. So go ahead and get your seatbelt position. Punch your arm through, crook of your elbow around the center of his neck. There's a few variations we can do here. I can grab my own bicep and get the knuckles on the back of his head, flex my arms, and then shrug my shoulders. Second variation, grab my own gi. Situate my elbow a little bit closer on top of his shoulder. Again, knuckles to the back, and we take the second choke. Instead of involving this hand on the top of his head, I can gable grip, hide it behind, notch it with my head, and now get the third variation. Finally, If he's holding on with both hands, okay, I can't lift in this direction anymore. Change the angle. Pull the elbow back so the forearm goes directly across the throat, and then simply pull in. So much of jiu-jitsu is learning how to turn 90 degrees in relationship to your opponent. So from here, we can head into an arm lock by stepping off, pulling on the arm, and then pushing on his head. I replace the arm pressure with the leg and fold out into the arm lock. Then we can repeat on the other side. I'm here, I step off, I pull the arm, push the head, replace, turn your knee in, and then finish with the arm lock. Scoot down back escape. So I'd like to lower my hips, and if you notice, I'm preemptively preventing him from getting the full seatbelt position. I've inserted my hands into my collar. Okay. So he can't secure that. I'm gonna pull myself down. I elevate my hips and drop my shoulders more toward his hips. I have a little bit of tension on his leg. I straighten one and shift my hip over to the side that I just cleared. At this point, I can drop my arm, hold on to his leg, scissor, and then change the position. Jordan has full seatbelt. Now, I would like to be able to control this choking arm. Right behind the elbow, right at the wrist. I'm gonna bridge, I'm gonna lift his arm and bridge and poke my head through this keyhole. Continue my bridge, have it come around. He wants to get on top. Block the shoulder, move your hip out, and come on top, if possible. The key concept with beginning jiu-jitsu, whether it's taking an armbar from the guard or escaping back control, is turning perpendicular. Right now we're in line. I want to get my shoulders on the ground and turn perpendicular. So as he starts to put this on, I dive to the side and then drive my shoulders on the ground. Now, sometimes you can push on the knee, but as he tries to come on top, if you can hit that shoulder, it's a little bit better, and it gives you the space to continue into a better position. One of my favorite back escapes is grabbing the head. It's a convenient pull point to change your position. So I reach up, grab his head, clear this hook, and then I simply do a shoulder roll over the back and take top. Another favorite back escape is when I am face down. I can be on my elbows and knees. I want to elevate my hips, okay? I don't want to rise evenly. I prefer to have my hips come above so he's slipping off. I have to kick one leg straight back, then I can hold on to his head and complete his turn. passing the guard. A couple of notes to set you up properly. Inside of the guard, I want to be in one of two positions. I'd rather be upright with excellent posture, or very, very close to him, low, head down, with my head turned to the side. Okay? Blocking his biceps. I'm not susceptible to chokes in this position. It's very difficult to get a choke from this position as well. Once I'm in this middle zone, Jordan can easily insert and attack for a choke, right? Then that takes either a block or a lot of strength to be able to resist it. So having good posture, whether that's extremely low or extremely upright, is what you're going for. Over the leg guard pass. Inside of Jordan's guard, we want to establish our grips. So I take two lapels, bind them together into one. Exert palm pressure on his torso to help prevent him from sitting up. Second arm goes to the middle of the thigh. I'm going to exert pressure above his knee and below his knee with my forearm. Take your grip, circle your forearm on the inside. Immediately I start exerting pressure, just enough. Then I shift my left leg out and continue to exert pressure. Now I can shift and get my knee in his tailbone. Swivel my heel out, drop my heel to the ground as my knee comes up. From here, a little press is all it takes to pop it down. Now as I press his leg to the ground, sometimes my own leg can get in the way. So don't be afraid to move your leg behind and then come forward. Other hand is going to drop next to his hip. Slide the inside knee very close. From here, I can baseball slide through and then push his knees back in position as I head into side control. Under the leg guard pass, we're going to begin the same way. Circle my forearm on the inside, want to exert pressure with that forearm at all times. I'm moving out. Okay, I have good leverage. I slide to my palm, press his knee down to the ground, and at this point I actually want to move my hips to the side. There's a little bit too much flexibility with his leg. So I step up and shift my hip. At this point, it's ready for me to shoulder that. Okay, make sure it goes all the way on top of the shoulder to the neck. Thumb inside. I drive forward, not laterally, but I go forward, bringing his knee to his face. Okay? At this point, I don't use my hands to clear. I use a sprawl to push my chest forward, clear his legs, and take side control. It's very common to encounter resistance with a straight arm lever and the palm of his hand on our hip. So we don't want to obligate our hands to clearing that. We use another part of our body. I come into position, push this down, hip shift, come underneath, bring it to my shoulder, he blocks. He's blocking. First way around this is to simply wiggle my hip. Get a good angle. Hit his wrist at an uncomfortable angle and take side control. Passing the open guard. It's a complicated issue, but here's a very simple way to ensure that you get past. Okay. So my palms are going to find their homes. One palm goes on the knee, the other palm goes on his hip or his floating rib, but I prefer the hip. Okay. On my right arm, my elbow flares out against his femur, blocking him from coming in with that leg. At this point, I trust my weight in my hands and move my legs back. My legs are now out of the way. I continue to walk around, drop the front knee. The palm that was pushing on the knee pushes it past, clearing the way for me to replace it with my knee at the hip, head control, and now you pass the guard. Sometimes you lose connection with that outside elbow. So as I find his hip with my palm, elbow goes to the inside of the thigh, right hand pushes down on the knee, I'm coming around, but then my left elbow loses a little bit of control and he throws that leg over my head. Okay? Here I do a hand switch, cup his thigh, baseball slide through, turn the corner, and now I pass it up. Another way we can pass a guard is by pressuring down on his knees. Now I'm just going to transfer my weight through my palms directly to his knees, although I could have an inside grip on his knees, which is often recommended, or even a touch lower at mid-calf. Okay. So transferring the weight to my hands, it makes my legs very light. I throw my leg out, circle this leg around to knee on belly position, make a final adjustment step, and now I've passed the guard. Against somebody with a really strong closed guard, you can't always open it from the knees. Sometimes you have to stand. Okay? So I'm going to gather 4 fingers in the cuff, double press, 2 hands pressing into his wrist, and now I can stand up on the side where the arm is bound. So step up, and immediately posture. Okay? I'm going to be pulling up, exerting pressure with my elbow above the knee, engage my hips. From here, I can often pop this open, going off of my own hip, or occasionally I need to push down on the knee. At that point, I can reach underneath, bring it to my shoulder, sprawl out, continue to hold on to that hand until it's no longer useful, and then take side control. Another option for opening their closed guard, particularly if you're a smaller player against a larger player, is putting the knee up the center. So here I am, palm against his bicep. This helps block any choke. Okay. Transfer the weight through the hands. I'm going to jump up. Okay. And then I'm going to get my shin straight up and down underneath his tailbone. So that requires me kicking this out and then connecting with the floor. Now, go back. The knee should split the legs right in the center, and then you can go left or right. Straight ankle lock. Let's look at the leg positioning. Inside leg is going to go underneath his hip with my instep. Outside leg has the heel placed on top of his hip. Now, my legs can be upright or they can be a little bit more to the side. Either way is totally fine. However, for the purposes of demonstration, I think it's a little easier to look at it this way. Knee pressure is important, but let's not put the knee pressure on yet. The next step is getting the right grip on his ankle. Okay? So it's very common for people to grab and try to crush the leg, but they're really crushing the calf. What you want to do is have a slightly loose grip and allow your body to fall back. So now I'm much more aligned with his Achilles, and it feels like his foot is almost going to slip out. So I grab my own wrist. I have a loose grip. I fall back until it's almost slipping out. And then I make 3 movements. All the way in, all the way up like a guillotine. I want a V shape here with my arm. And then all the way back is rolling the shoulder. Now, once I get that tightness, all the way in, all the way up, all the way back, I take the slack out. Now I can scoot my hip in slightly and squeeze my knees together. Roll to the side if you'd like. Arch the upper third of your spine and have a nice tight ankle lock. Toe press. Similar positioning with the legs, except instead of encircling his ankle, I'm going to sit up and ride my palm until it rests just on his instep. Okay? My pinky should be roughly aligned with this little toe. At this point, I want that knee to pop up just a little bit. I eliminate the slack and make that knee pop up. My knees come together, and this is very important, I fall on my shoulder. I want to fall on my shoulder, squeeze my knees together, and then extend that upper third of the spine for the submission. Again, for the toe press, legs squeeze together. I rock up and then extend his instep with my palm. My arm should be at 90 degrees, and my shoulder has to hit the mat. From here, I extend with the upper third of my spine as my hips go forward. So, rock back, and the palm pressure creates the submission. Knee bar from open guard. This is a great position to practice it. I want to scoop with one of my arms and then push away the other leg. So I'm going to scoop from the inside and get his Achilles right in the crook of my elbow. I push this other leg away and then start to shift my weight. I want to really trust this hand so I can do a nice swivel through. Okay? I'm not bringing my leg all the way through. I want to actually rock back, squeeze my knees together, and take the straight knee bar. The heel hook is an important submission to know. You need to be aware of it in case you ever get caught in it. So, I'm going to have a similar leg position. I'm going to rotate my inside knee in while still keeping pressure on his hip with my heel. I'm going to trace back with my elbow and rotate my upper body. I push down on the toes, which elevates that heel. I want bone-on-bone connection right here. I'm going to go into a gable grip. I support my first hand with my second hand. I rotate my wrist and make sure that heel is coming up toward my chin. At this point, I can rotate my body, but also I'm going to rotate my body back as I also go to the side. I'd like to make a point about the heel hook. The heel hook, while it might be considered an advanced technique, it's extremely important that you know when you're in danger. So, my knees are squeezed together, and I'm going to transition from an outside heel hook, which you should be aware of. It's easier to get that rotation. We come into position. I have it right here. It's very tight. I release. When I square back up and pop my hip, I can push it into an inside heel hook, which you should also be aware of. This is a very, very powerful technique, and you should tap immediately if ever caught in the position. Then going back, I can pop, rotate, and then head back into the heel hook one more time. And you can make a little drill of this, outside to inside heel hook. The threat of a heel hook can lead to a knee bar. This is one simple combination. So I head into a heel hook, he rotates, I slip that bottom leg through, and then I cross my ankles. From here, holding on to his heel, I thrust my hip forward and take the knee bar. I teach a universal footwork sequence to enter into leg locks. So from an open guard, I like to pick and push. So I pick this heel off of my hip, I push his knee out of the way, and then I often bring my leg back to completely clear that outside leg. So, pick, push. The leg that stepped back then goes underneath his hip. From the heel, I grab the knee to ensure that my hip and his hip can stay relatively close. I lean back and immediately exert pressure with my tricep on his foot. From here, we can go into any of the foot locks that I just showed. For example, I can move my hip back, insert for the straight foot lock, and then slide my hip back in. I can also sit up for the toe press. Drop my shoulder on the ground, extend my upper third of the spine back and hip forward. If I go inside with my knees, from here I can scrape back, get the heel hook, take it, If I go back to center line, pop my hip, and guide the foot, I can enter easily into an inside heel hook.
Let's take a look at the triangle choke through the eyes of a white belt and how that changes as you work towards your black belt. The triangle choke is a strangulation, generally performed with the legs, encircling a head and arm together in an ever-tightening triangular noose, which I form with my legs and may assist with my arms. The triangle choke is often first taught from the guard, and it begins by separating one arm from the rest of the body. If Jordan reaches back between my legs, that's ideal. Or, if I pull on his hand and he pulls back, that also clears the way for my leg to shoot over their shoulder and into the triangle position. The neck and trap shoulder are then squeezed together for the submission, or unconsciousness ensues. Though not necessary for the choke, the arm is often crossed over, which can allow for easier adjustments in the angles you're creating pressure with through your legs. Oh, and grab your shin. These refinements increase your efficiency and rate of finishing. And let's keep it real. Finishing is fun, but as your belt color darkens, you find out there's even more fun in setting it up. So at blue belt, learn to attack the arm. They'll pull it out and separate it from their body, setting up the triangle position for you. Or you can use your knee to break his grip, push over the bicep and shoulder, and swing into position. Or simply stage the foot, put it on the bicep, and get that much closer to your goal, shooting your hips up, ensnaring and turning in one motion to increase your efficiency. Or to be a little less obvious, attack their balance from the opposite corner. Knock him towards you, then shoot your leg over. Let's throw a choke in the game. Go for the guillotine. We attack the neck. He pulls his arm in to protect it. All Jordan needed was a reason to go where I wanted him to. At purple belt, you're making things easier by leaning into your guard game. Angle yourself out and work your knees into the mix. You should always be positioned to attack, which could mean slipping your shins into a triangle, or an omoplata to a triangle, or perhaps a triangle to a wrist lock. Don't underestimate the wrist lock. Brown belts do more off-balancing. Everything's a probe. You might attempt a hip bump, but allow them to catch their balance. Their arm separates from their body, so slip the leg under, and the triangle is waiting for you. Or off-balance them with a sweep. Pass the arm over in the transition, and allow your opponent to sit back up into the triangle. This is a classic maneuver if the cross-body arm lock is well defended. So just slip your leg into position, and let it cause the next action. Let it happen. Adding one additional step, I can sweep Jordan with a lasso guard. The threat of that off-balancing, or kazushi, will make him pull away from me. And yet, that pull puts me in position to spin underneath and finish with a triangle choke. But things are not always so. The triangle can also be used as a holding position, or osaikomi in Japanese, from the top or from the bottom. This kind of positioning allows for greater control of their body, so I can then attack a single arm without an effective defense on their part. Similarly, the reverse triangle allows you to attack their shoulder, their arm, and it gives you the option of switching back to the regular triangle. Triangle doesn't have to be just a submission, just like Jiu-Jitsu isn't just about fighting. By black belt, you're taking the triangle everywhere. You can get it from the mount, from the back, from a stiff arm by your opponent, which practically begs the triangle. That is, if you choose not to attack for the arm lock, which is also there. Or just jump guard and shortcut to it. That's what the black belt does. They move boldly and see opportunities everywhere, where others might see obstruction. The triangle is a teacher. It helps you think systematically and understand the chain of causation. Once you see the chain and learn to master the setup to what you want, success will inevitably follow. This is what you're training for.
This. When I have a fight, I will switch arms, just in case I go lose it. Panic and my partner switch. Yeah, I'm comfortable and confident. Versus, I know.